Thom Hartmann here on the best of the rest of economic and labor news. You need to know this. Apparently, Mitch McConnell thinks there wasn't enough spending in the last election. The incoming Senate Majority Leader wants to slip a new campaign finance loophole into the upcoming budget bill. Currently, individual candidates can receive $5,200 per donor in an election cycle, but national and state party committees can receive much, much more. There are regulatory limits on how much those parties can coordinate with candidates on political advertising. However, McConnell is trying to attach a policy rider to the omnibus bill that would remove the restrictions on candidates and parties working together to coordinate spending on advertising. The only restriction left in McConnell's rider says that party spending could not be, quote, controlled by or made at the direction of the candidate, end quote. It doesn't take a criminal mastermind to see how easy it would be to get around that guideline. If his rider is successful, it would make the individual campaign contribution limits meaningless, as billionaires could simply donate more to the parties and candidates could influence how that money is spent. McConnell himself helped clear the path for massive donations to parties in the McCutcheon case, which eliminated the aggregate cap on how much one individual could donate to political parties. Now the Republican leader wants to be rewarded for his hard work. We've seen the damage that massive campaign spending has done to our political system. We must continue to call for an amendment that says money is not speech, and we've got to fight hard to keep the meager regulations we've got left. Call your senators and tell them to keep McConnell's rider out of the budget, and tell them that we will keep fighting until we get the money out of our political system once and for all. Many of us were outraged that retail stores forced their employees to give up their holidays so that they could start their Black Friday sales a day early. While we can decide to spend our hard-earned money at stores that respect their workers, one city wants to do more to protect retail workers. Recently, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors unanimously agreed to support a new Retail Workers' Bill of Rights that will force companies to show a little respect for their sales associates. If approved by the city, that measure will apply to all chain store and restaurant employees, and it mirrors a federal measure that Thom Hartmann introduced in the U.S. Senate. The bill would encourage companies to offer more employees full-time schedules, discourage unpredictable scheduling practices that keep workers from getting an education or a second job, and would require that companies pay workers who are considered on call. In addition, the legislation would prohibit pay discrimination for part-time workers and protect employees in a company that has been bought or sold. These common-sense protections are great news for workers in San Francisco, and they show how retail workers should be treated in every state in our nation. There are still about 9 million Americans out of work in this country, but it's clear that Republicans won't let our government invest in our nation to put people back to work. Since Congress won't act, Dean Baker at the Center for Economic and Policy Research says that we can create demand for new jobs just by taking more vacations. When workers are out for sick days, vacation, family leave, someone has to step into their role, which means that someone else works for that period of time. In a recent article, Dean used Germany to explain how this policy can reduce unemployment. The average person in that country works 400 fewer hours a year than the average American, and their unemployment rate is only 5%. If we adopted the shorter work schedule and paid time off that Germany uses, 20 million more Americans could have a job right now. May seem counterintuitive, but it makes perfect sense. If Republicans won't help us create jobs, we can push businesses to do so by taking the time off we deserve. Depending on your gender, you may be paying a lot more for certain things. According to a new article by Hannah Gold at Alternet, so-called gender pricing is pretty common in our country. For instance, women are still charged more for health care, despite new regulations in the Affordable Care Act. However, men are typically forced to pay more for car insurance, even if they have a similar driving record to their female counterparts. This price discrimination extends into many other products and services as well. Bars and nightclubs often feature ladies' nights when they offer reduced cover charges or drink prices to women, but virtually never offer similar specials for men. Hair salons and dry cleaners also charge women more for services than they charge men, and car dealerships have been documented pricing a car 40% higher for a woman than they did for a man. These types of gender discrimination are well known, but they're perfectly legal. There's no federal law to prevent unequal pricing of goods and services. Perhaps it's time our lawmakers remedy that injustice. And finally, it looks like some Democrats know how to negotiate. Thanks to Mayor Rahm Emanuel, workers in Chicago are getting a raise. Last week, the Chicago City Council passed a measure to raise that city's minimum wage to $13 an hour. In a 44-5 vote, the council passed the measure, which will go into effect gradually. Mayor Emanuel used a proposal for an even higher wage as leverage, which was submitted by a group of Chicago aldermen to pressure the city council to adopt his bill. Instead of starting the negotiation at the point of his goal, Rahm Emanuel recognized he had to start from a higher point to ensure workers in his city ended up with a reasonable wage. If only more of our national lawmakers, especially our Democrats, understood this basic principle. So thanks to a successful bargaining job here, workers in Chicago are getting a raise, and that group of aldermen vowed to keep fighting for a $15 minimum wage. And that's the way it is for the week of December 8th, 2014. I'm Thom Hartmann on Labor and Economic News.